the locked gate and the faded photo. The rain fell gently, whispering over the roof of the black SUV as it came to a stop at the edge of a dusty, cracked road. In the distance stood a small, weathered gate, half covered in rust and vines. Behind it, an old building with faded yellow walls leaned gently with age. This was no luxury hotel, no red carpet, and no glamorous set. It was an orphanage, hidden from the world, forgotten by many, but not today. Inside the SUV, Keanu Reeves stared out the window, his face calm but his eyes filled with something deeper, an ache that had no words. The driver cleared his throat gently. "Sir, we're here." Keanu gave a slow nod, opened the door, and stepped into the drizzle. He didn't bring an umbrella. He didn't care about the mud. He walked straight to the gate, pausing only to run his hand over the rusted bars. A small lock hung from it, old, dented, and barely holding on. "This place," he whispered, mostly to himself. "This is where she came from." Just days ago, Keanu had received a letter. It wasn't from a studio executive or a fan. It was a handwritten note tucked inside an envelope that had no return address. It had only one sentence. "She waited for you every Sunday." And a photograph. The picture was old and grainy. It showed a young girl with wide eyes and an awkward smile. She was standing in front of this very gate. He never met her. He didn't even know her name until the second page. Eliza. She was his sister. Or at least that's what the letter said. And now he was here to find out the truth. As Keanu stood at the gate, a small face appeared in the shadows of the entrance. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, with no shoes and a nervous expression. He ran back inside before Keanu could speak. The sound of footsteps and whispering followed. After a few minutes, an older woman came out, wearing a loose shawl and carrying a broom. Her eyes narrowed as she saw him. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone cautious. Keanu stepped forward, gently holding out the photo. "I think someone named Eliza lived here, a long time ago." The woman stared at the photo. Her breath caught. "Eliza, yes, I remember her. Sweet girl. Always sat by the gate on Sundays. Said she was waiting for someone." Keanu's throat tightened. "Did she say who?" The woman nodded slowly. "Her brother. She said his name was Keanu." The rain suddenly felt colder. It dripped from his hair, clung to his jacket, but he didn't care. He had spent his whole life thinking he had no siblings. And now, he was standing outside an orphanage, realizing someone had been waiting for him, hoping he'd show up. They invited him inside. The building smelled of old wood and damp stone, but there was warmth here. Not from heaters or luxury, but from the small acts of kindness. Blankets neatly folded, drawings pinned to the walls, a bowl of rice being shared between children. Keanu walked slowly through the hallway, his boots echoing on the tiles. Each step felt heavier. The caretaker led him to a room with peeling paint and a single iron bed. On the wall was a shelf filled with old books and handmade toys. This was her room, the caretaker said quietly. Keanu sat on the edge of the bed, reaching out to touch one of the books. It had her name written inside the cover, Eliza Reeves. His hands shook. "She passed away 3 years ago," the caretaker continued. "Sickness. We tried, but we didn't have enough medicine." Keanu didn't speak. He simply stared ahead, eyes glistening, heartbreaking in a way he had never experienced on screen. "She left something," the woman said. "For you." She handed him a worn envelope. Inside was another letter. The handwriting was shaky, but every word was filled with love. "Dear brother, I don't know if you'll ever come, but I want you to know I believe in you. I saw you once on a TV someone brought. They said you were famous, but to me, you're just my big brother. And I hope one day you find this place. I'll be waiting. Every Sunday. Love, Eliza." Keanu Reeves had seen many scripts. He had read emotional lines, cried for characters, lived in imaginary worlds. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for this. That night, he didn't leave. He stayed in Eliza's room. He didn't sleep. He read every note she ever wrote. He looked at her drawings. One showed two stick figures, one tall, one small, standing hand in hand by the gate. The taller one had a beard. The smaller one had a big smile. Beneath it she had written, "Me and Keanu." The next morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, Keanu made a decision. A deep one that would change the lives of everyone in that orphanage. "How many children live here now?" he asked the caretaker. 23, she said. "But we don't have enough beds, not enough food either. We manage somehow." Keanu looked around. Kids were brushing their teeth with broken toothbrushes. One girl was wearing shoes that didn't match. Another had a torn sweater. "You won't have to manage alone anymore," he said softly. He didn't announce it on social media. He didn't call a press conference. But from that day, he made sure every child in that orphanage was fed, clothed, educated, and loved. He fixed the broken walls. He built a new library. He brought in doctors and teachers. He returned every month, sometimes quietly, sometimes with gifts, but always with love. The gate that once held a locked past now opened to a future full of hope. But one day, something unexpected happened. Something that brought the past crashing into the present. A little girl arrived carrying a photograph in her pocket, and what she said to Keanu made him freeze in place. That moment changed everything. The little girl with the photo was a quiet afternoon at the orphanage. The sun filtered through the trees, casting soft golden light across the new courtyard Keanu had helped build. Laughter echoed as children ran barefoot on the grass, chasing each other and playing with a dog he had rescued for them named Lucky. Keanu was sitting under a neem tree, helping one of the younger boys fix a broken toy car. His sleeves were rolled up and his face, though weathered, carried a peace that only came from doing something that truly mattered. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was family. Then, something changed. A black and white rickshaw stopped just outside the gate. The driver stepped out, confused, as a tiny girl in a yellow dress climbed down carefully. She was maybe 5 or 6 years old. She held a tattered cloth bag in one hand and something clutched tightly in the other. The gate creaked open. The children paused their games. The caretaker stepped outside. Keanu looked up from the toy and saw her. The girl walked forward slowly, uncertainly, her dark hair messy from travel. She stopped a few feet from him. The caretaker approached gently. "Hello, little one. Are you lost?" The girl didn't respond. She kept her eyes on Keanu. Then, slowly, she opened her fist. Inside was a faded photo. Keanu's eyes widened. He stood up, heart pounding. She held out the photo with both hands and whispered, "Are you him?" Keanu walked over carefully and knelt in front of her. He took the photo and stared at it. It was a picture of Eliza, young, smiling, standing in front of the orphanage gate. But this time, the photo had something written on the back in a child's handwriting. Mama said he would come one day, find him. His name is Keanu. The girl's lip trembled. "My mama was Eliza. She told me about you." Keanu's breath caught. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Hope," she said. And in that single moment, everything around him disappeared. The wind slowed. The noise faded. And he saw her, not just as a child standing in front of him, but as the last heartbeat of his sister's story. The caretaker brought them inside. Hope sat on a small stool, sipping warm milk. She looked around, nervously, eyes searching every face. Keanu sat beside her, still holding the photograph. "How did you get here?" he asked softly. "Mama got very sick," she said. "Before she went to the stars, she told me to come here. She said you'd be here. She said you're kind." Keanu wiped his eyes quickly before Hope could see. She told the truth. Hope reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. It was old and frayed. The first few pages were drawings, simple ones, a house, a tree, a man with a beard. And then, on the last page, there was a note in Eliza's handwriting. If you find him, tell him I never stopped believing, and tell him our story isn't over. Keanu closed the notebook and held it to his chest. He had come looking for answers. Instead, he had found a child. His niece. The days that followed were slow and gentle. Keanu stayed by Hope's side. He helped her settle in, introduced her to the other children, and made sure she had a bed with warm blankets. But deep inside, something was stirring. He had spent so much of his life searching for meaning, through fame, through silence, through pain. But this child, this unexpected thread of life, was pulling him somewhere new. One evening, as they sat watching the stars, Hope asked, "Do you believe in magic?" Keanu smiled. "Sometimes." Mama said stars are wishes, and if you love someone who's gone, they send you little signs. Keanu looked up. The sky above was filled with stars, and for the first time in years he felt his heart beat with something pure. "Then I think I saw one today," he whispered. "Because you came." But not everything was peaceful. A few days later, a man in a gray suit arrived at the orphanage. He came with papers and questions. He said he was from the city records office. "We received an alert," he told the caretaker. "A child arrived here alone. We need to know who she belongs to." Keanu stepped forward. "She's with me." The man raised an eyebrow. "And who are you, sir?" Keanu paused. "I'm her uncle. Do you have proof of relation?" Keanu hesitated. The letter, the photograph, the notebook. They were real, but would they be enough? The man nodded sharply. "Until this is cleared, the child must be placed under state protection." Hope's eyes widened. She clutched Keanu's hand. "No, please." The man stepped forward to take her. Keanu stood between them. "You're not taking her," he said quietly but firmly. The man reached for his radio. "Sir, this is protocol." Keanu looked him in the eye. "Do you know who I am?" The man paused. "Yes, but that doesn't give you custody." "I'm not asking for custody," Keanu said. "I'm asking for compassion. And if you take one more step toward her, I'll make sure the world hears how you treat children who come with nothing but a name and a photo." The man stepped back. Within hours, lawyers from the city were calling. But this time they weren't threatening. They were offering help. Someone had leaked the story, an anonymous source. Maybe someone from the orphanage. Maybe fate. And within days, Hope was legally under Keanu's care. The children at the orphanage celebrated like it was a festival. They drew cards. They sang songs. One boy even tried to bake a cake using only rice and honey. Keanu smiled through it all, but inside, he knew something deeper had just begun. This wasn't just about Eliza anymore. It was about every child who had ever waited at a gate holding a photo, hoping someone would come. But Hope had one more surprise. One night, as they were packing her things into a small chest beside her bed, she pulled out a folded paper from her pillowcase. "I didn't show you this before," she whispered. Keanu opened it slowly. It was a hand-drawn map, and marked in red ink was a place far away from the city. "Mama said this is where the secret is," Hope said. "She said we should go together one day." Keanu stared at the map. He didn't know what it meant, but deep inside he felt something shift. A journey wasn't over. It had just begun. The journey to the red circle, the morning breeze carried a new kind of energy. Children were playing as usual, but their eyes often wandered to the gate, curious about what would happen next. Hope stood beside Keanu, the folded map clutched tightly in her hand. "Are we really going?" she asked. Keanu looked down at her and smiled gently. "Yes, we're going." He didn't fully understand why the map mattered, but he had learned to trust that some things, especially the last wishes of a sister he never knew, were not to be ignored. The map was simple, a red circle drawn on a blank space. A short note scribbled beside it in Eliza's handwriting, where it all started, where it must end. No address, no names, just lines and symbols only she could understand. Keanu spent the night comparing. The map with satellite images, old city plans, and old photos from the caretaker. Then he saw it, a small village in the hills, surrounded by trees and farms, nearly forgotten. No roads led directly there anymore. It was near a river that dried, up years ago. That's where they had to go. They set out early, just after dawn. The caretaker packed food, and the children lined up to wave goodbye. Lucky, the orphanage dog, barked loudly, refusing to be left behind, so Keanu let him climb into the back of the Jeep. Hope sat in the passenger seat, holding her notebook and a photo of her mother. She looked out the window with wide eyes, soaking in every tree, every passing goat, every village market they drove through. Keanu glanced at her now and then. He had spent years around cameras and scripts, but sitting next to this child, his niece, felt like the realest moment of his life. "Did Mama ever come here?" Hope asked as they passed through a narrow bridge. "Maybe," Keanu replied. "But I think she wanted us to find something she couldn't." "Like what?" "I'm not sure yet. But maybe something she left behind." After 7 hours on the road, the Jeep stopped at a fork where the dirt path ended. Ahead of them was only forest and uneven hills. "We walk from here," Keanu said. They packed a small bag, water, bread, flashlight, and began walking. Lucky ran ahead, sniffing bushes and chasing birds. The trees grew thicker, the air turned cool. The sounds of the city faded until there was only the wind and the distant call of birds. After an hour, they found it. A small stone arch, broken, covered in moss. It led to a clearing with the remains of an old building. Maybe once a home, now just memories buried beneath vines and time. Hope stopped suddenly. "Look," she said. In the center of the ruins was a tree, not tall, not wide, but standing strong. And on the trunk, carved into the bark, were letters, K+. Keanu walked over slowly, heart pounding. He touched the carving with trembling fingers. "This was our tree," he whispered. Keanu sat on the ground beside the tree, breathing slowly. As a boy, he remembered dreams, flashes of laughter in a field, a little girl with a red ribbon, a voice calling his name. But they were always blurry, always incomplete. Now, sitting here, the pieces returned. His mother had taken him from this place when he was just a child. The place was too poor. She was running from something, or someone. She never spoke about it again, and Eliza was left behind. Tears streamed down his face. "I left her," he whispered. Hope came and sat beside him, placing her small hand on his. "You didn't know," she said, "and she never blamed you. She told me you were her dream." Keanu looked up at the tree. Hope stood and began digging at the base of it. "Mama said there's something buried here," she said. They cleared the soil with their hands. Soon Keanu's fingers hit something hard, a tin box. He pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside were drawings, folded letters, and an old locket. He opened the locket. Inside were 2 photos, one of a young Eliza and one of him as a child. She had kept them together all these years. They sat in silence, reading each letter. Each one spoke of hope, dreams, memories of a brother lost and never found. One letter, written shakily, had only one sentence. "If you're reading this, then I was right to believe in you." Keanu closed the box and hugged Hope tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. The next day, Keanu made a decision. He bought the land around the tree. He rebuilt the house, not as it once was, but as a place where children like Eliza and Hope could grow up loved and protected. He called it Eliza's home. Not an orphanage, a home. A place where forgotten children would be remembered. A place where dreams would not be left buried under old trees and broken stones. News of the place spread quietly, not because Keanu announced it, but because those who found it left with full hearts and teary eyes. Famous artists came to paint, teachers came to teach, doctors came to heal. Hope grew up with stories of her mother written all around her, in paintings and poems, in whispers of the wind. And one day, as she stood under the tree with the same red ribbon her mother used to wear, she looked up at her uncle and said, "We found her, and she found us." But just when everything felt complete, an old man arrived one morning with something in his hand that would open a part of the story even Keanu had forgotten. He said, "You may think you know everything, but this will change what you believe about your father." And what he revealed would lead Keanu and Hope to a truth far deeper than they ever imagined. The secret about their father. The sun was barely up when the old man arrived. He came walking slowly, leaning on a wooden stick, with clothes that looked older than the bricks of the house behind him. Children ran up curiously, surrounding him, like he was a strange storybook character come to life. Keanu was in the middle of helping fix a swing when the caretaker approached him. "There's someone asking for you," she said softly. Keanu wiped his hands and stepped out into the courtyard. There, the man stood, thin, gray hair tied back, dark eyes filled with time. Keanu looked at him carefully. "Can I help you?" The man nodded. "You don't remember me, do you?" Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Should I?" The man took a shaky breath and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded paper, old, yellowed, but carefully preserved. "Your father," he said, "was not who you think he was." Everything around them went still. The children's laughter faded. The trees stood frozen. Keanu took the paper slowly and opened it. It was a photograph. A younger version of the old man stood beside another man, tall and handsome, wearing a mechanic's uniform. Behind them was the same tree Keanu had found with Hope. And between them, two small children, Keanu and Eliza. "That's not possible," Keanu whispered. "I never met him. My mother said he was gone before I could remember." The man lowered his gaze. "Your mother left with you in the middle of the night. She didn't just run from poverty, she ran from fear." Keanu stared at him, his voice quiet. "Fear of what?" "Fear of the truth," the man replied. They sat under the neem tree for hours. Hope sat close beside Keanu, listening carefully. The man introduced himself as Ravi. He had been a close friend of their father, Michael Reeves. Michael had worked as a car mechanic in a nearby town, honest and quiet. But one night everything changed. "He discovered something," Ravi said, "a secret in the factory where he worked. Something dangerous. He tried to expose it. They threatened him. He refused to stay silent." Ravi's voice cracked. "A week later, the workshop caught fire. Your father died in it. But before that night, he gave me a letter. He told me if anything happened, to find his children one day and give this to them." He pulled out a second envelope. Keanu opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten letter from his father. "To my children, I may not get to see you grow up, but I want you to know. I stood for what was right. I loved your mother. I loved you both. If you're reading this, then somehow you made it back. Protect each other. And please, if you ever can, finish what I started. Not for revenge, but for justice." Keanu closed his eyes. All his life, he had believed his story began with silence, with loss. But now he was beginning to see. It had started with courage. Keanu stood at the edge of the rebuilt home that evening, looking out at the sky. The air was quiet, but his mind was loud with questions. Hope walked over. "Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," he replied honestly. "I thought I came here to help others, but maybe I came to help myself too." She held his hand. "Mama would be proud." He nodded. "And your grandfather? He didn't die for nothing. I want to know more. What happened at that factory? Why he was silenced? Maybe we can still do something." Hope tilted her head. "Are we going on another journey?" Keanu looked at her and smiled. "Yes, but this one might be harder." They traveled to the small town where the fire had happened. It was now a ghost town. The factory had long been shut down. People had moved away, but some still remembered. An old woman at the tea stall said, "Michael Reeves was brave, too brave for those days. He tried to expose a man named Kashyap, the factory boss. Big name. Untouchable back then. Keanu dug deeper. He searched through old news records, digging through dusty government files. And soon he found something shocking. An unfiled report, signed by his father, sealed away. Never delivered. In the report, Michael had exposed illegal waste dumping that was poisoning the nearby river. Many villagers had gotten sick. Some died. But the company paid everyone to stay quiet. Except one man, Michael Reeves. Keanu took the file to a local journalist. He didn't want fame. He wanted truth. "Can this be published?" he asked. The journalist studied the document. "If it's real, then this is a story decades in the making, and yes, it can be published. But there will be backlash." Keanu didn't flinch. "Then let it come." A few weeks later, the story broke. Decades-old tragedy exposed. Hollywood star fights for late father's justice. It went viral. But the story wasn't about a celebrity. It was about a man who once tried to do the right thing, and the son who finished what he started. The news led to an investigation. The children of those affected families came forward. Lawsuits reopened. The company had been sold, but the truth couldn't be buried anymore. Keanu didn't give interviews. He didn't stand on red carpets. He stood beside farmers, villagers, and elders who had long been silenced. He gave voice to the voiceless. And through it all, he kept returning to Eliza's home, because that was his anchor. Hope continued to grow, reading more, writing letters, and even planting flowers around the old tree. Lucky grew slower but never left her side. And one day, while cleaning the attic of the new house, she found something, a small recorder. When they played it, static filled the room, followed by a soft voice. It was Eliza. "Dear Keanu, I don't know if you'll ever hear this, but if you do, just know, you didn't leave me behind, you brought me forward. And if you're here now, it means our story was worth something. Thank you." They sat in silence. Keanu pressed his forehead against the recorder. "Thank you, Eliza," he whispered. "You never stopped believing." But just when he thought everything had come full circle, a letter arrived at the gate. No name, no return address, just one line. "You found the truth about your father. Now are you ready to face the truth about your mother?" The truth about their mother. The letter sat on the table for hours. Keanu couldn't bring himself to open it right away. It was strange. He had already walked through loss, found a niece he never knew, uncovered the truth about his father's death. And yet, the idea that there was more, something hidden about his mother, felt like stepping into darkness barefoot. Hope noticed. She always noticed. "You're scared," she said gently. Keanu nodded. "I'm not scared of the truth. I'm scared of what it might change." Hope reached over and placed her small hand on his. "It won't change what we've built here. Not this. Not me. Not Eliza." And just like that, Keanu took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Inside was a short note, typed and cold. "Your mother wasn't running from your father. She was running from something she did. Visit the church records in Sundarpur. Ask for Father Nilesh. He knew her before she left. The truth lives there." The next morning, Keanu and Hope packed a bag and headed towards Sundarpur, a sleepy town tucked between the hills and the river. The road was narrow, the trees thick, and the silence deep. Lucky, older now, curled up quietly in the back seat. As they arrived, the town seemed frozen in time. Small shops, old men playing cards under trees, and a dusty church at the far end of the street. Father Nilesh was waiting. An elderly priest with kind eyes and a memory that hadn't aged a day. "You're her son," he said the moment he saw Keanu. Keanu paused. "You knew my mother?" The priest smiled gently. "I knew her before she was your mother." They sat inside the old church, its walls filled with echoes of whispered prayers and buried confessions. The priest brought out an old journal. "Your mother came here often. She was quiet, thoughtful. Not many knew what she carried. But I did." Keanu leaned forward. "What happened?" Father Nilesh sighed. "Your mother was in love with your father truly. But she made a mistake, a terrible one. Before she met him, she was engaged to someone else, a powerful man from a powerful family. She broke it off to be with Michael. That man's family didn't forgive her. They made her life difficult. After Michael's death, they threatened to take you both away, to destroy what little was left. Keanu's hands tightened into fists. So she ran? Yes, the priest nodded. She didn't run from guilt. She ran to protect you. He slid a folded letter across the table. She left this with me in case her children ever came looking. Keanu opened it slowly. To my children, you may hear stories that say I ran away, that I was weak. But know this. I fought every day to keep you safe. I watched over you from afar, even when I couldn't be near. I made hard choices so you would live free from fear. And if you ever return to Sundapur, forgive me, and remember me not for my escape but for my love. Keanu blinked away the tears. Hope sat silently, tears falling too. She never stopped loving us. Hope whispered. Outside the church, Keanu stared at the trees for a long time. So many pieces, he said. All this time, I thought my story started with emptiness, but it began with sacrifice, with pain and love. Hope leaned on his arm. Can we visit her grave? Father Nilesh nodded. She's buried in the back. She came here in her final years, when she knew her time was short. They walked together to the garden behind the church. Under a small tree was a stone. Mira Reeves, a mother, a sister, a warrior in silence. Keanu knelt by the grave, placing a wildflower at the base. He whispered, "Thank you for everything." Hope placed her drawing on the grave too. It showed a woman, a man, and 2 children holding hands under a tree. "This is our family now," she said. As they left the church, Father Nilesh walked with them to the gate. "Your mother wanted you to live boldly," he said. "To use your name not just for films but for faith, for good. She believed your voice would one day heal what was broken." Keanu nodded slowly. "Then I need to keep going." They returned to Eliza's home, greeted with cheers and hugs from the children. But something was different about Keanu now. He stood taller, not in pride, but in peace. He had found not just his family's past, but its purpose. That night, he stood under the stars, the same stars Eliza once believed carried messages from loved ones, and he spoke softly. "Father, Mother, Eliza, I found her, and she found me, and we are building something beautiful." Hope joined him and whispered, "Do you hear that?" Keanu listened, children laughing, music from an old radio, the wind moving gently through the trees, and beneath it all, something else, a kind of calm heartbeat, like the house itself had started breathing again. But just as they thought the story had reached its quiet end, a phone rang in the main office. A government official from abroad was calling. They had found something unexpected, an old sealed adoption file from a foreign agency, and inside that file was one name Keanu never expected to hear again. Eliza's biological father, and the truth would shake everything they thought they knew. The final truth, and the promise, the air, inside the main office felt heavy. Keanu stood still, the phone pressed to his ear, listening carefully. On the other end, a soft-spoken woman from an international child welfare agency explained what had just come to light. Hope sat nearby, swinging her legs gently from the edge of the desk, watching her uncle's face shift through quiet confusion, disbelief, and finally, stillness. When the call ended, Keanu placed the phone down slowly. "They found something," he said, voice low. The caretaker and Hope leaned in. "After Eliza was placed in the orphanage," he continued, "someone filed paperwork overseas. A man, her biological father, had tried to claim her, but the file was blocked. No one ever told her. And now, he's alive, and asking if he can meet Hope." Hope blinked. "My grandfather?" Keanu nodded. They didn't rush the decision. Keanu spent days reading through the old documents that were mailed afterward. There were letters, certificates, and one faded photograph of a man standing outside a small bookstore in Istanbul, Turkey, a bookstore he still owned. His name was Yusuf al-Mansour. He had once loved Eliza's mother, a kind Turkish poet who passed away when Eliza was just a baby. Overwhelmed with grief and poverty, he sent Eliza to live with distant relatives in India, relatives who eventually left her at the orphanage. "He's not asking for anything," Keanu said. "He just wants to meet the last person who carries a piece of his daughter." Hope looked at the photo. "Should we go?" she asked. Keanu studied her carefully. "Only if you want to." Hope smiled softly. "Maybe it's time to close this last door." 2 weeks later, they flew to Istanbul. It was Hope's first time on a plane. She was glued to the window, wide-eyed as clouds passed beneath them. Keanu held her hand during takeoff and she whispered, "Mama would have loved this." The city was alive with color, bustling streets, golden domes, and the smell of roasted nuts and fresh bread in the air. But deep in a quiet corner of the old town they found the shop. Dar al-Noor Books, a small door. Faded sign. Ivy creeping up the walls. Keanu knocked gently. The door opened and an elderly man stood there, thin but strong, with deep, sorrowful eyes that widened the moment they saw Hope. He dropped the book in his hand. "Eliza," he whispered. Hope stepped forward, then paused. "I'm not her," she said gently. "But I'm her daughter." The old man's hands trembled. He knelt and held her without saying a word. For a long time, they didn't speak. Then he looked up at Keanu. "You must be the brother." Keanu nodded. "I am." They went inside. The shop was filled with thousands of books, stories in every language, stacked on every shelf, each corner filled with pages waiting to be touched. "I never stopped writing," Yusuf said, "after she left, after I lost her. I wrote poems for her birthday every year, hoping that maybe someday someone would walk through that door." He handed Hope a small notebook. It was filled with poems, written for Eliza. Hope turned each page slowly, eyes welling with tears. "Mama would have loved this," she said again. They stayed for a week. They explored the city. Yusuf taught Hope how to make Turkish tea. They lit candles together in memory of Eliza. And one night, while sitting on the rooftop under the stars, Yusuf said something that made Keanu's heart clench. "Thank you for raising her," he said, "for giving her a life filled with love." "You've given her more than I ever could." Keanu shook his head. "She saved me. We saved each other." When they returned to Eliza's home, it was already buzzing with activity. More volunteers had arrived. The school had doubled in size, and on the front gate someone had painted a new sign. "Home is where someone believes in you." Keanu stood under the neem tree where it had all begun. He remembered the locked gate, the photo, the child waiting every Sunday. He remembered the moment he first heard Eliza's name. And now, standing beside Hope, he felt the story settle. Like a circle closing. Years passed. Hope grew. She studied hard. She started writing stories, some funny, some brave, all honest. The children adored her. She became the heart of the home. Keanu kept building, not just walls, but dreams. He opened more centers across the country, each one named after someone who once waited, someone who once believed. But every month, no matter where he was, he came back to that first tree, to remember, to honor, to breathe. On the 10th anniversary of Eliza's passing, Hope stood in front of a crowd at the home. The children gathered. Villagers came, volunteers and visitors from around the world. She held the same notebook her mother once left behind, and she read aloud. "My name is Hope. My mother was Eliza. My uncle is Keanu. I grew up in a place where no one had to be perfect, only kind. A place built on love, not bricks. And this home, this family, is proof that even the smallest seed can grow into the tallest tree." The crowd stood in silence, then applause, then tears. That night, under the stars, Hope asked Keanu, "Do you think she sees us?" He smiled, eyes glistening. "I know she does. And somewhere between the stars and the leaves above, the wind whispered a quiet truth. Love, when planted deeply, never dies. It becomes home.